Okay, welcome everyone. Tonight, we are here for a webinar to prepare for the upcoming LIPA Commission public hearings. My name is Ryan Madden. I am the sustainability organizer with the Long Island Progressive Coalition. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm calling in from the traditional lands of the Lenape, Sagatoke, and Wapanenger communities, as I am currently at a retreat in Ossining, New York. The Long Island Progressive Coalition is a member of the REIMAGINE LIPA campaign. We are a campaign of grassroots ratepayers and organizations that believe we must fully commit to a new paradigm of energy management in the LIPA service area. We were responsible for passing the commission on the future of the Long Island Power Authority, which we'll be discussing tonight in preparation for upcoming public hearings. Just so you know what to expect, tonight we're going to hear from Professor Mike Menser and Billy Roberti from the REIMAGINE LIPA campaign. They will present for about 20 minutes or so around our vision for a restructured LIPA and a little bit about the commission process before we'll have a brief question and answer period. We'll then go over details for the public hearing and help you prepare your comments. And so with that, I am going to pass to Billy Roberti. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Let's start with the basics. There are 4 players in this play that we've been living through. Long Island Power Authority is the public authority. It owns the Long Island electric grid and contracts out operations with PSC Long Island. PSC Long Island is a private corporation, it has stockholders, it answers to them. It's based in New Jersey, and it was basically given the franchise to run the electric grid by Governor Mario Cuomo after Superstorm Sandy. You pay your electric bill to PSEG. That's why everyone knows it. Next is National Grid. It's a private company, publicly traded again, based in the United Kingdom. It operates the gas utility and also provides most of the generation power to LIPA PSEG. You pay your gas bill to National Grid. They own the majority of power plants on Long Island. Finally, there's the Department of Public Service Long Island. This is a branch of the Department of Public Service. It is a state office, and it was created after Superstorm Sandy to monitor LIPA and PSEG. It has an $11 million budget, and we pay it. Next. So we started off with LILCO back in 1911. LILCO was formed. It was a lighting company. It acquired more and more little electric companies and finally was Long Island wide. By the way, I found out today, Rockaways used to be part of Nassau County, which is why it's part of the LIPA service area. And LIPA was LILCO, Long Island Lighting Company, in 1998, turned over its assets and debts to the Long Island Power Authority, which was created in 1986. And at that time, it was actually Keyspan that ran the grid. And then in 2007, it was acquired by National Grid. And now then National Grid ran it until 2014, and because of how poorly it responded to Superstorm Sandy, the contract then went to PSEG Long Island due to the LIPA Reform Act of 2013, and they are contracted up through the end of 2025. Next. So how did we get here? Okay, in 1965, LILCO decided to build a power plant in Shoreham. And there was a lot of public debate about this, especially in 1968, public battles going on about the Shoreham nuclear power plant. How could we evacuate the island when we can't get off the island during rush hour? In 1986, the Long Island Power Authority was created. In 1998, notice that's 12 years later, LIPA finally took over all the assets and debts from LILCO and started with Keyspan that became National Grid to run it, the grid. In 2014, as I said, National Grid replaced PSEG. In 2020, we had Tropical Storm Isaias, which was even worse response. And there was an investigation about how PSEG was performing and a question about the public-private model. And that brings us to this year, 2022, when we passed the Legislative Commission on the Future of LIPA bill, and we now have a legislative commission. And many people ask me, isn't PSEG Long Island our electric utility? No, they bill us. They operate and maintain the grid. The Long Island Power Authority is our electric utility. They sub out a lot of the work to PSEG. And that is the major part of the problem. It gets to be a game of telephone. Anyone play that when they were a kid? There's a problem LIPA notices. They tell it to PSEG. By the time it gets to the people who do it, it takes a long time, and sometimes the message is garbled. And both partnerships with First National Grid and then PSEG has proven to be expensive and unreliable, and worse than either public or fully private utilities. Next. Just in case you thought you were the only ones, the 2021 JD Power Electric Utility Survey for residences found that LIPA was way down. PSEG Long Island was way down with a score of 677 out of 1,000. And that's of all Eastern region large utilities. Next. This year, JD Power Electric Utility Survey was of businesses. And same thing. PSEG is down here. Sorry, I didn't move that arrow down. PSEG is way down here. And National Grid is not much better, but it's bottom when it comes to business. Next. The current situation. Back up one, please. Oh, okay, must have gone to current. Are you sure there's not one in between? There, thank you. There are 1.1 million customers. That means accounts across Nassau, Suffolk, and the Rockaways. LIPA has, I heard the latest number is 77 employees. I heard that today. Managerial, analyst, and administrative, plus the board of trustees. So they have been inching up from 50. PSEG employs 18 managers, and they cost $80 million a year. They provide transmission and distribution systems operations, power supply planning. Excuse me. They recently, after the problems with Isaias, there was a new contract signed. Next. LIPA's current mission and structure. It is a not-for-profit public utility. It subcontracts the operation and maintenance to a private for-profit utility. The Board of Trustees' mission is to enable clean, reliable, and affordable electric service for us. It supervises, regulates, and makes policy for the authority. There are 9 trustees. Next. Back one. Okay, no, next one. Thank you. Last year, LIPA did a full inquiry into what happened with Isaias, and the key findings were PSC's Long Island response to Isaias was avoidable, and management failures were the cause. They lack proactive risk management. I don't think any of that is a surprise to any of us. Next. And now we turn it over to Michael.
All right, thanks, Billy. So as you can see, PSE&G's failures are pretty in your face and pretty really insulting and depressing to ratepayers, right? There was a storm coming. It wasn't like a Superstorm Sandy type situation. It was a tropical storm. They had lied about having their communication system ready to go. And afterwards, they've continued to not really be transparent about the nature of the communication system, which is so critical for us to be able to get a hold of our utility and for them to be able to respond to events when we need them to. So because of that, we created the Reimagine LIPA campaign, which is a group of concerned ratepayers and organizations who believe that we can do a lot better. Again, really came together after that response to PSE&G. But of course, for folks who've lived on Long Island for many years, there's been a whole host of failures over the last several years, including high rates and poor service, even outside of the disaster space. So we were able to get a bill passed in 2022 to investigate and then evaluate a public power model for LIPA. And that's where we are tonight. So some folks who do hear about, private utilities versus public utilities, some people think, there's this idea that the private utilities are more efficient, right? Private corporations are more efficient, that public power is risky or it's untested or doesn't have a track record, or also that, it's government ownership and that won't make for innovative utility. If you look at the data, all these are false. Public utilities have a lower rates than private utilities, so they're more affordable, they cost less. They have shorter outage times. They do a better job in responding to outages, whether due to disaster or to equipment failures. And they already serve close to 15% of Americans throughout the country, from the East Coast to the Midwest to California. And so they have a great track record, or a very well-established track record over the last 100 years. And on innovation, we've actually seen a few utilities in the public space who have been very innovative in the digital space, which of course is so critical for so many areas of our lives, including the public utility system. Another great thing about public power, which there's again a long track record of evidence for, is that public power tends to be much better for the local community. There are more contributions from public power entities to the local community in terms of programs, business development, and so on. The local hiring, obviously, these are good jobs. A lot of these are good jobs, and a local public utility tends to be much more active in the employment of a local community than a private utility that's got multiple sites or owned by foreign investors. Public power has been more supportive of renewable energy. So although not all public utilities have been very good in this, if you look at the public utilities, if you look at the utilities in the United States that have 100% renewable energy, all of them are public, all of them. There's only about 7 of them in the United States, which is pretty depressing. The closest one to us, I believe, is Burlington, Vermont. But we want LIPA, right? We want a fully public, locally owned utility to be innovative in this space and do that. And that's connected to the giving community a voice. When you have a local public utility, you have more opportunities to influence what they do, to be accountable to you, and also for you to, for us to give input on the future of the utility in terms of its plans and ambitions. There's also financial advantages in terms of the tax and regulatory space of public utilities. This is kind of going into the weeds a little bit, but as some folks know, public utilities don't pay income taxes. They do pay payments in lieu of taxes, which is another thing which people could raise, we could get into more. They also qualify for disaster reimbursement from the federal government because they're public. So a private utility like Con Ed, they're not eligible to get that, but a public utility like LIPA is. And public utilities can borrow money at lower interest rates than private utilities, which, and those, doing that kind of investment, of course, is really important when we think about transitioning from the dirty fossil fuel grid to the cleaner renewable grid. And given that the debt of LIPA is around $9 billion because of the purchase of LOCO, that's a big deal. So let's go with a fully public LIPA. It's cheaper, it's more accountable, it's more responsive, it's more equitable, and it can move faster. We're calling not just for a LIPA to be fully public, but to be restructured and be more democratic in terms of its board, in terms of its management, and in terms of the partners that it works with to do planning, and also working with communities on renewable energy and disaster response. Boy, I mean, I love, have people seen the PSE&G ads lately? They're on buses, radio, TV, they are all over the place, and they're also on the internet. And one of the private utility associations, which is called the Edison Electric Institute, they've been, putting out messaging in the social media space that's been very inaccurate, misleading, and one might even say deceptive. Calling this a government takeover, and all that implies of inefficiency and so on, which, as we've talked about, is not something that's actually in accordance with the evidence. This is not a government takeover. Right now, under the current model, the governor actually does control the LIPA PSE&G partnership because the governor has a lot of sway over who's on the board and what the board does. We want to take the board and make it democratically accountable and hopefully elected. And Billy went over a lot of this stuff already. And so that's, again, our vision is not just to make LIPA fully public and get rid of the private utility partner, but to have an elected board, to redo the rate structure so it's fair. We have such a crisis when it comes to folks who are behind on their bills, small businesses, lower income folks who are on fixed income. There should be a much fairer rate structure for that, a better reliable service, working more with communities, and benefiting the public and not the shareholders, as in the case with PSE&G. We're also calling for a new institute that could help work with the communities and monitor LIPA much better than the DPS office does, which runs, has that $11 million budget. And all it's basically done is renegotiate the contract with the private utility that we don't want to be part of this partnership. So in our new law that we passed to create this commission, we're trying to build a vision that is going to not only lead to a fully public utility, which gets rid of the private utility partner, but also restructures it to do all these things that we're talking about. The commission is made up of 8 elected officials, bipartisan, Republican and Democrat. And there is an advisory committee of 15 representatives that are drawn from different geographic areas around the service area, Rockaways, Long Island, Nassau County, and Suffolk County, and representatives from Shinnecock, from the business community, from schools. We had our first meeting today. It was very exciting. I'm one of the representatives on the advisory committee, and Billy was there today as well. This is the list of the elected officials that you can see who are part of the commission. The co-chairs are Kevin Thomas and Fred Thiel. And this is the list of the advisory committee members. And this is on our website too, if you want to go and peruse that with all the bios. The commission's supposed to look at a lot of these things that we were just talking about. How is it governed? Who's on the board? How do we appoint or elect people onto board? How do we improve transparency so we know what's happening? How do we improve accountability and get meaningful involvement from the residents of Long Island and the Rockaways? How do we improve the reliability of the system, especially with the challenges of climate change and worse storms and heat waves and droughts and worse winter storms? Rates are going up. How are we supposed to grapple with this? Do we have the best rate structure? Is there other kinds of assistance that we can get to folks who are low income or fixed income so that people don't lose electricity, which is, face it, just a complete catastrophe for someone to lose that. And then again, how do we make sure that we're equipped to deal with these storms that we get, from the intense rain events like an Ida, the big storms like a Superstorm Sandy, or even these smaller tropical storms like an Isaias. So the commission is supposed to look at all this, how to do it more efficiently, how to have better oversight, how to deal with that debt that LIPA has, how to improve long-term planning much more, especially as the climate changes so much, and how to comply with the goals of New York State when it comes to the Community Leadership and Climate Protection Act. How do we get more renewables? Right now, it's only about 6% of our energy on Long Island is renewable. That's embarrassing, 6%. How do we handle this trickier issue around taxation and payment in lieu of taxes that can impact our schools and impact on places where the fossil fuel energy plants are closing down? How do we also think about compensation for those communities that have been impacted by these facilities? And then consider other things that might be relevant for doing this public process for the commission. So we're in the middle of it. We're at the beginning of it right now. Really, the advisory committee was just named. We had our first meeting of that. The hearings are coming up. We're going to hear about that in a minute. And then after those first round of hearings, a draft is written by the commission with the advisory board. The New York State Comptroller reviews the draft. That's supposed to happen in February. And then after those comments are known from the comptroller, there's supposed to be public hearings again so that people can see, okay, how's this draft actually developing? What is it looking like? And then that final draft is supposed to go in during April, although we heard that might get a little bit pushed back because the commission has been late in starting. We heard that today. And then there's time to get everything put into place, the PSE&G contract doesn't expire until the end of 2025. And that might sound like a long time off, right? And in some ways it is. But also, this is definitely a complicated, big thing. So we're not trying to rush anything. We're trying to do this in a sequence that makes sense and delivers that power as we make the transition. So that's the plan. And I now turn it over back to Ryan for the brief Q&A.
Thanks so much, Mike. If you want to stop sharing your screen, Marion is asking folks to put questions in the chat. So I'll actually hand it to her I see there's one question in the chat, but keep it coming, and Marion will ask them as they come in.
Sure. Elsie's question is, what specific pushback on this proposal do you expect, and from whom? I guess that could be for either Billy or Mike.
So one pushback is a lot of advertising from the private utility partner, PSE&G of Long Island. So PSE&G has these great, they have nothing to do with anything ads. You know, it's like happy people in their kitchen using the microwave and it works and things like that. And you're like, wow, the power's on. PSE&G is great. And there's like flowers and popcorn and stuff. So that's kind of the fun pushback. I think that what we're also seeing is that there's definitely resistance from some powerful folks on Long Island to going fully public that are more connected on the PSE&G side or on the private utility space. I think that that's sort of a general pushback. I think there are also some, there's really, legitimate questions about, like, if you have an elected board, what do those districts look like? How many members are there that are elected? If DPS Long Island is not going to be the monitor of this new LIPA, how is that monitoring going to happen? Of course, we have ideas about how to do that. But so that's other kinds of, maybe that's not pushback, but there's also legitimate questions about what this looks like. But I think a lot of the pushback is actually driven by ignorance of people thinking like, this is a government takeover, government, it's inefficient, it's not going to be accountable. And like, we get that, like, we understand why a lot of us feel that way when it comes to particular government agencies or offices. But it's not, this is not a government takeover. It's actually a takeover by the residents of Long Island and the Rockaways to have direct accountability over the utility. Right now, again, LIPA is basically controlled by the governor, whoever it is. It was Cuomo, now it's Hochul, and she's the one who has the sway over the board. And it doesn't look like the governor's in control of LIPA. That's kind of how the setup goes. But when it comes to actually influencing the board, that's who's in charge. So we want a local takeover that also brings in a lot more community views and interests and ideas, and is part of the public ecosystem, right? Of connecting with universities on Long Island, connecting more with the business community, connecting more with residents to really respond to the interests that people have.
I'd like to throw in, we used to have a private electric utility, and they were very happy in 1998 to hand over their assets and their debt to LIPA to get out from under a possible bankruptcy. We've already been through that. We do not need that again. I'm done.
All right. So the next question is from Francesca, is this a done deal that we will become fully public?
No. So the task of the commission is to create the plan for making LIPA fully public in a way that's democratic, accountable, and renewable. So the commission it has this advisory committee to get all these inputs on the different aspects of this. For example, the IBW, which represents the workers who are in the SERFCO unit who do all the work. What will it mean for them to transfer their pension system into the state pension system? So they go that. So there's details to be worked out. And then in April or May, the plan is submitted into the budget, into the legislative session to get the plan passed or part of the plan passed to commence with the transition. But what the legislation that we got passed sets up the commission to set the process into motion. So it is not a done deal as of right now.
Okay, so we're a little behind, so I'm going to just do one more question and then I'll get to the other, I'll keep monitoring the other ones as they come in. Has there been any analysis of our rate structure as compared to other communities nationwide? Or why are we paying some of the highest rates in the nation, and are we still paying for Shoreham?
Yes, we're still paying for Shoreham. So with rate structures, I have not seen a good analysis of different rate structures, even among public utilities, about how much do low-income folks pay, how much do middle-income folks pay, how higher-income folks pay. In terms of demand, if you use less energy, do you pay less? There's different ways of setting that up with the fees and so on with a bill. So that's something that we would like to see the commission and the advisory committee do more research on. And that's some of the things that we're requesting from this, is to get better analysis of what different utilities are doing and what are options in that space. So that's definitely, yeah. Go ahead, Billy.
To say that statewide, they're starting to look into rate structures to make them a little bit more fair in terms of who uses a lot, because as we move into using heat pumps, we will be switching from using fossil fuels to using electricity, which means the electricity consumption that for those households will go up. Yes, the Shoreham debt that we inherited in 1998 was $6 billion. Right now, the LIPA debt is $9 billion. No, we have not paid off Shoreham, and we have accrued another $3 billion in debt. And that is a big cause of our electric rates. Those go into the delivery charges. And right now it's something like $238 or $248 million a year we pay just on the interest, because we haven't paid any part of the principal down. That's a lot of money to be carrying debt, and we're all paying for it.
Okay, with that, I think I'm going to keep taking questions through the chat. And then at the end, if we have time or if people want to stay, we can get to almost all of them. I can't promise. So with that, I turn it back to Ryan.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Yeah, we want to make sure that folks feel clear on the public hearings that are coming up. We have some materials and resources that can help support you in navigating that. We will also be open to answering more questions at the end of this. We're very excited and happy to see all the questions coming in. We'll leave Billy and Mike's contact information at the end too for folks to follow up. And as Marian said, she'll be collecting and we can try to follow up separately. But in the meantime, I'm going to share my screen now, and Eric Weltman is going to walk us through what we can expect for the upcoming public hearings.
Wonderful. So again, my name is Eric Weltman. I'm a senior organizer with Food and Water Watch. We're really thrilled to be part of this incredible campaign. I'm going to be covering three things: the context for the hearings, how to draft your testimony, and when and where the hearings are being held. But first, I want to briefly note the most important things perhaps for you to know. First, everyone testifying will have 3 minutes to speak. Second, in your testimony, you should clearly make our shared top line demand, as should we all, for a fully public, democratic, accountable energy system committed to providing affordable, reliable, renewable energy. Third, your testimony should also address why this matters to you. That is, what your concerns and motivations are. This kind of personal touch is very helpful. And fourth, the purpose of the hearing is for commission members to listen to us. They will not be asking any questions or asking for more information from us. So the context of the hearing. The hearing is being run by members of the LIPA Commission. These are the people whose job is to implement the law. The commission is made up of 8 members of the legislature. They're mostly Democrats, and they're all from LIPA's service territory. members of the advisory committee may also be present at the hearings. In other words, these folks are generally sympathetic, at least most of them. And if anything, many will be glad that we're there showing public support for a fully public LIPA. Our role at the hearing is essentially threefold. First, to show broad and deep public support for the mission of the commission, that is, to create a roadmap for a fully public LIPA. Second, to provide specific input on what this means to us. That is what we want a fully public LIPA to look like, addressing concerns such as governance and community engagement and oversight. And third, to show that we're watching them. That is, that we're going to be holding the commission accountable to doing their jobs right and in a timely manner. So our presence at the hearings and showing the commission and the leaders who appointed them how much this matters and why will send a powerful message that will help set the tone for and help guide the rest of the process. Okay, so your testimony. Again, individuals have 3 minutes to speak, though no certain invited guests like representatives of particular organizations, may be given 10 minutes. Ideally, your testimony should contain 4 elements. First, who you are and where you're from. This should include, of course, your name and your town or community, but it could also include other ways you identify yourself. Maybe you're a parent, a teacher, a business owner, an environmentalist, particularly those that help convey why you're testifying at the hearing. Second, who, if anyone, you represent. That is, if you're speaking on behalf of an organization or a community group, we encourage you to say that you're a member of the REIMAGINE LIPA campaign. Third, our demands. That is the talking points about what we're looking for in a REIMAGINE LIPA. As noted above, you should include our shared top-line demand, as should we all, for a fully public, democratic, accountable energy system committed to providing affordable, reliable, renewable energy. And as someone representing the REIMAGINE LIPA campaign, we hope you'll express your support for our entire package of recommendations. And then, very briefly, reference 1 or 2 of the specifics that you find most compelling, whether it's for an elected board, around maintaining the current unionized workforce, or ensuring lower rates, particularly for lower income households, seniors, and small businesses, or what have you. And finally, fourth and finally, and perhaps most importantly, the personal touch. Your story about why this matters to you, your family, your community. This personal touch could reference aspects of your identity, whether you're a parent, a business owner, a senior citizen, or what have you. It's entirely up to you what and how much you reveal. But this is an opportunity to share your passions, your concerns, your worries, whether it's about climate change or paying the bills. This portion of the testimony will certainly be the most memorable and is essential to showing why and how much this matters to you and members of our community. So finally, when and where to testify. As indicated on the Future of LIPA website, there are 4 public hearings being held, 3 in person and 1 virtual. Unfortunately, the in-person hearings are all on weekdays starting at 10 a.m., so they won't be accessible for many people, but the virtual one is in the evening. The in-person hearings are in Nassau County, Suffolk County, and the Rockaways. The first in-person hearing is on Tuesday, November 29th at Hofstra University. The virtual hearing is that same evening, November 29th at 6 p.m. The Rockaways hearing is on Thursday, December 15th at the Rockaway YMCA. The Suffolk County hearing, the last one, is on Friday, December 16th at the Suffolk County Legislative Building in Smithtown. While it's true that it's not ideal to hold these hearings during the holiday season, there's an imperative to holding them at this moment. As Michael noted, there is a timeline, and the commission and staff are trying to hold true to the timeline contained in the law. And while they may not meet all the timelines, we wanted to encourage them to be as close as possible. Now, the process for registering to testify at the 3 in-person hearings is simple. You just show up. There's no advanced registration, so we recommend you arrive a little early if you can, or at least on time. And note, we don't know how long the hearings will last. That depends on how many people show up to testify. The virtual hearing on November 29th does require registering in advance on the Future of LIPA website, and you must do so by 3 p.m. that day, November 29th. So that is my my presentation. Take it away, Mr. Madden.
Thanks so much, Eric. Yeah, so I'm going to put into the chat right now a guide that we have worked on. It has all of the information you will need in order to participate in these hearings. It has all of the information we just put up on the slides, links to the commission website, and instructions for how to register where you need, as well as specific talking points and other helpful things to ensure that you are able to participate. It does have it's a little bit long. We have different sections depending on what you need. If you just need to know how to register, we've got you. If you want very specific or general talking points, we got you. If you want detailed talking points, we have provided those as well. We want to make it as easy as possible. We also have contact information so that you can follow up with us. So we're just going to run through a little bit of our talking points so you know what to expect. We kind of alluded to some of them before, but obviously we want the commission to stick to the timeline. We want public ownership and control over the electric grid and all of its assets, knowing that public-owned utilities do better than private utilities on things that matter most to customers. We want a local control through an elected multi-stakeholder board, as opposed to the Albany controlled appointment process that we currently have. So again, this is really about making it more democratic, accountable to communities on Long Island and the Rockaways. We want to modify the mission of the Long Island Power Authority to include things that matter most to us and communities: climate justice, energy democracy, equity, and greater participation. We want the revenues to be invested in our system and to lower rates rather than going to shareholders and management fees. We want to explore funding and building and operating our own renewable energy systems because LIPA has the ability to do it, but does currently not take advantage of it. We want to make sure that the workforce remains the same and that the union members are taken care of. They do not want to be a part of a public sector union, and there are ways to make sure that doesn't happen. So we want to make sure that the workers, first and foremost, are taken care of and have what they need in the transition, and then also have a greater say in how the system runs moving forward. And we want to draw best practices from what we've seen across the country. We want more support for things like community solar, thermal energy networks, and a more wide-ranging conservation programs. As a part of the transition, obviously making sure that the executive board and staff operate and maintain all parts of the grid rather than continue this contractual relationship with a third-party provider. And as we alluded to, but didn't get into as much detail, we've given a lot of thought to an independent energy observatory as a means of not only oversight and accountability, but also community participation. It would be both independent of the utility and the government. It would monitor LIPA, it would coordinate the needs of the utility with the needs of community, and it would engage and support communities and do timely research that the board of LIPA would need to consider in the management of the system. And especially with higher rates, utility arrears and debt, we want to make sure that our restructured utility really tackles energy burden and upholds the goal to not have, of New York's goal to not have more than 6% of people's monthly income go to energy bills. And we'd also want to explore the recent decision, as of this week, by the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power to end power shutoffs for low-income customers who can't pay. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We're going to have another Q&A. We want to limit to the best of our ability at this moment to the Q&A around the process for the public hearings and questions you have around how to engage in it. If there aren't that many questions on that, we can go back to some of the questions previously in the other chat. But again, we want to just be really sure that folks feel good and comfortable about engaging in the commission in the upcoming public hearings. And again, I will share the guide that we have created that is very thorough in helping to support folks. So people can take that home with them, obviously, and we will be sending that out along with a recording of this presentation after the event. And so with that, please post your questions in the chat, and we will get to them. And again, we will go back to other questions about, again, our long-term organizing and advocacy plans around specifics of the utility if folks don't have other questions. But again, we want to make sure that the guide is clear and that folks feel sure and confident in engaging in the upcoming hearings.
And by the way, I'm not sure if we've noted this, but we're happy to review anyone draft testimony. That's certainly something that I think we'd be happy to help with if folks want it or need it.
There is a question. It doesn't make sense to try to do the virtual and an in-person hearing, or should we pick one or the other? Like, what's the best bang for the buck, I guess?
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'd be happy to take a stab at this. I think that it makes more an impression if you do have the time, the energy, the capacity to show up in person. I mean, it's just, obviously it's more of an investment of time, but I think that lends itself to having, again, if you can do it, a greater impact.
And there seems to be a little bit of trouble with the virtual hearing, signing up. Are they going to email the links for that? Do you know how that works?
I am not sure. The website itself is new, and some of the protocols are still being determined. I'm wondering, Mike, if you have any sense about the virtual hearing.
No, but these were just recently announced, and any questions as people try to sign up and so on, just if you have experiencing any difficulties, let us know, and then we can ask the commission.
Eileen has a question that will she find out at the hearing whether she's limited to the 3 or the 10 minutes? Should I bring supporters with me who have signs and stuff like that?
So, Eileen, if an organization wants to be invited to testify, they're supposed to get in contact with someone on the advisory committee. So you could email us, that is me in this case, or if you have a relationship with anybody on the advisory committee, Nassau County has folks, Suffolk County has folks, Rockaways have kind of folks. So you could go through one of them, and then we put in that request to the commission, and they then will, agree to it or not, depending on, who you are, the argument that's given, and so on. I think they're still trying to feel this out too, like how many do they get? But basically, if you want to get an invitation to testify where you have the longer amount of time, contact an advisory committee member to put in the request to the commission. Otherwise, you could bring a whole crew, and sometimes people divide up different points that they make. The first person does the first point, the second person does the next point. That can be very powerful when you have 8 people, boom, boom, boom. They're all given the different parts of the testimony as one big narrative.
The question about signs, though, is a good one. A couple of thoughts come to mind. One is it might be worth Michael, are trying to find out whether or not signs are allowed. If nothing else, you can always, sneak in, 8.5 by 11, signs that are printed out, on a printer saying, public power now or something to that effect. Those are easy to bring in. You can just hold them up, while sitting in your chairs while others are testifying.
Yeah, and as far as I know, I see the question, you can testify at multiple hearings.
Hmm.
You can't testify twice at the same hearing. So you can't, be put in the queue twice. They reiterated that today, but there should not be any problem with, I know I've testified at multiple hearings before. You can testify at multiple hearings.
Great. And just going back up, I see Francesca. I know, again, the website's a little wonky, but if you sign up to create an account, you just need name, email, and a password that you make up. I'm pretty sure that if you revisit the hearing thing and pick up sign up to attend a meeting, there's like a drop down where you can click I want to attend and present my testimony at the meeting. And I think if you go and fill out that form afterwards and hit sign up, that does it for you, and they'll follow up with the information. But I also haven't clicked that yet, so I'm not sure. But I think the two-step process of signing up with like an account and then going through and visiting that page again. But we're still navigating the website ourselves, so if that's not clear, we'll figure it out together.
Okay, because it's not clear.
Well, not to put too much on you, Mike, but that might be helpful to communicate back to folks at the commission, so we're sure about that.
Wait, and which part was that besides the signs?
Oh, sorry, just that the website, Francesca is saying that it's not clear once you like sign up to attend a meeting where the information like.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Yep.
And do you have any idea about the media at the public hearings is the question?
I imagine that at least the first one in Nassau will be covered. Just so folks know, the Nassau one at 10 a.m. at Hofstra, the invited guest at the top of the list there will be the Long Island Power Authority, PSE&G Long Island, and the Department of Public Service. So they're going to have those like kind of 10-minute invited guest opportunities to speak. And then because of their role in the management of the system, there will be for them, I think, like an extensive Q&A as they're like collecting and gathering info in the process. So I imagine because those like heavy hitters are going to be there, that folks like Mark Harrington at Newsday, who has been closely covering this for quite some time, will be there. And I think in terms of other opportunities for media, I think the November one's very quick, but there's an open discussion within the Reimagine LIPA campaign. And if interest from folks here of, having some kind of presence outside of the hearing space beforehand, which we would obviously want media to cover. So hopefully some good reporters will be there regardless, given how monumental this process is and transformative it can be. But right now it's not like, guaranteed that they will be there. And I would also, just to go back to your question, Eileen, around representing a group of 500 people, like I think and their involvement and roles. I think an organization can have like one invited guest, like one invited speaker, but that doesn't mean that other people who like are members of the org can't give their 3-minute testimony and say, I'm a member, note their affiliation, but it's not the same as being that one invited guest. Like, LIPC has, members. I will probably be giving our like invited guest one if I'm able to get that, which we should be able to. The commission wants us to send names of organizational reps so that they can do that. But like any one of our members, volunteers, and supporters who want to identify with us should come and testify. Great. Are there any other questions folks have. We're going to use our last 5 minutes to just wrap up and share some links again to make sure that folks have everything that they need. But before that, I want to make sure that there's any questions unanswered. And I know Mike was doing some work to respond to some of the outstanding questions from the previous section. So hopefully folks are feeling good about that. Otherwise, again, we will share contact information shortly so folks can follow up that way.
Ryan, there was a good question in the chat we didn't address because I didn't hear it addressed, was why can't we just fire LIPA, PSEG? And I'd like to say, LIPA was set up more as a financial organization to take on the LIPA, the Shurham debt. It's not capable at this time of just firing a company and taking over. That's why we're spending the next 2 or 3 years to get it ready. It needs to hire people. It needs to be organized. If we just fired PSEG and LIPA took over the next day, we'd have total chaos. We need time to plan it and hire the right people.
Thanks, Billy. Okay, I think with that, we'll move to closing out. Thank you all so much for your thoughtful questions and engagement. Sorry, I'm just seeing a guy noting in the chat, the link to confirm my email never came through the commission website. I'm not entirely sure, but what that means. But we can talk offline. So yeah, just to wrap up, I know there's a lot that we discussed tonight. There's a lot of complicated topics here. At the end of the day, there's a huge process being undertaken to transform the way that electricity is governed on Long Island and the Rockaways, and we have an opportunity to help shape that. So we would really love people to commit to testifying. I'm sorry, I forgot to share my screen again. So let me do that. Sorry, folks. So we really want people to commit to filling out to commit to testifying or submitting written comments. So we have a Google form where we can follow up with you and support you if you need help in that. It's just good to get a sense of whether or not people are able to. Of course, as we shared before, you can use and please share our guide. It has sample verbal comments, it has sample written comments, it has talking points, it has instructions. So we really want to make sure that folks are feeling good and comfortable. So again, please fill out please share and utilize that and let us know if you're able to. So similarly, commit to submitting written comments. Fill out our Google form, same one, but just sharing it again, so we know whether or not you're going to submit written comments or attend some of the public hearings, or do both. We really encourage to the ability that you can to participate in all the ways that you can. Then please visit and share our website, publicpowerlipa.org, which provides a little bit more background on the campaign and our vision and our thoughts and thinking about this restructured utility. Then you can actually join the campaign. We have another form here to let us know how you would like to take part, whether you're on board with some of our policies and provisions, and whether or not you have some ideas for us to consider. And so this is a way to join our bi-weekly meetings, support outreach efforts, help organize events, and be a part of things like these public forums, webinars, and help recruit and mobilize folks to join the actions that we're taking. One of the answers to one of the questions around what are we doing to push back on some of the lies by the Edison Institute and other forces is making sure that we're also staying in the news. Newsday does a lot of coverage of LIPA issues. And so submitting LTE's letters to the editor in Newsday in support of the commission is a great way to help out. And then finally, as we mentioned, we're going to put in the emails for Mike Menser and Billy Roberti, who are happy to give presentations to your groups. And so we have their emails in the chat for you all to follow up with. And again, we will send out an email after the meeting with a recording of the event and all the materials and the information we just shared. And so with that, thank you all so much for spending your evening with us. Thank you for your interest in this work, and we look forward to seeing you at the upcoming public hearings. Again, let us know if you're going to participate. We're here to help you at all steps along the way. So thank you again. Have a good night, and we'll see you soon.